All right, I'm back working on the engine test stand. What I need to do now is I got this upside down, but this area here, I think is where I'm going to put the, I've got a little 1 gallon gas can I'm going to use for a fuel tank when it's running. So I'm going to take, I've got a piece of expanded metal. I'll cut it down to fit across here, tack weld it in place. That way when it's flipped over, we can nestle the gas tank down in that area, setting on that expanded metal. Got the expanded metal on there. This little gas can is what we're going to use for a fuel tank. Since this will be gravity fed, it's got a pretty solid spot right there. So I'm going to drill and tap that 1/8 inch pipe, use a 1/4 inch hose fitting because that's what will go into the carburetor. We'll set that on there. The fitting will stick right down through the expanded metal and run underneath to the carb. Okay, I got the engine mounted back on the test stand. It's probably going to stay there unless something goes bad, probably until the airplane's done. Because I can just hang that out in the shop on the stand and put it back on the tractor whenever I need to. Right now, before we put the prop on, got to get the bolt that holds the hub in there. And I could not find a torque spec on that bolt. I mean, that when it's holding the pulley on the actual VW, it's like 32 foot-pounds. And that seems a little light for that size bolt. I think I'll just torque it to 50, which is probably still pretty light for that size bolt. But we'll go with 50, unless somebody knows what it's supposed to be torqued at. And we'll definitely be putting a little thread locker on there. Okay, we're ready to torque it down. I needed some way to hold the hub, so since I had the welder out already, I just found a couple of pieces of flat that already had holes drilled in it, so I welded it onto a piece of pipe. Take that, stick that through, tuck a piece of old sock in there. Don't throw your socks in there so it doesn't scuff anything. And I decided to go to 70 foot-pounds. There we go. So that's torqued on there. Now that the main bolt is torqued down, I'm ready to put the prop on. I've got this thing set at top dead center on the #1 cylinder over there. This comes along with the crank, and that's the last piece to balance everything. And it fits on just like this. That side at top dead center, and they have it marked front. So we'll put that behind, stick the prop on front, and then the prop plate on it and get it bolted down. Now, if that's at top dead center, I probably, when I'm hand propping it, will want the prop to be down about here as I flip it. At least we're going to go with that idea right now. Alright, I got it all bolted on there. I haven't torqued them down yet, but I wanted to see how it did. Start hitting compression about there. So that ought to work pretty slick as far as prop starting. Yep, I think that'll be about right. Since I'm losing light and it's about dinner time, I'll have to continue this video later. Well, after a couple of day break to go to Corvette weekend in Eureka Springs, Arkansas, ready to get back to work on the bug. Torque specs from the prop manufacturer were 144 inch-pounds for the 5/16 bolts on this. Do it in a crisscross pattern. So we'll get it all torqued down. Next up, we'll put the intake manifold on. And next up, we'll get the 2 oil lines installed and clamped down. Next up, I wanted to install the carburetor. Wanted to get a couple things set on it first. First is the idle here. That's the idle mixture screw. And we're going to go with settings that Hummel has in the engine plans for the Zenith. And it's calling for one turn out. And on this one, this is an air bleed screw, so the further you turn it out, the leaner the mixture gets. You turn it clockwise and turn it in to make it richer because it'll cut down on the airflow. So I got that set at one turn. Right now we need to put in the main needle. Remember this one, I got this carb pretty cheap because the needle was broke off. And then I went and found the exact needle that Hummel recommends for it to replace it. Right now we'll get a wrench, pull that off, put this new needle in. And this needle is a conventional fuel needle, so the farther you turn it in, the leaner it gets. The farther you turn it out, the richer. Plan's called to set it at the main mixture at 3 turns out. So we'll turn it in to where it just lightly bottoms, and there's half, 1, 1.5, 2, 2.5, 3. We'll see how that works. We've also got the levers to add for the idle and the choke. But I think I'll put those on there after I've got this bolted on. So I cut out a gasket out of some gasket material a while ago, shortened up some bolts to go through it, and now we're ready to install. Also picked up a little K&N air filter to use on it. The fuel inlets on this carburetor are set up to where you can put it coming in either side or out the back there. So we went with the back, put a brass nipple on there. Got the fitting little nipple in the bottom of my gas can. So we'll set it probably like that. And then run the hose over to the carb. All right, the fuel delivery system is complete. Got the tank, wired it to the little platform. Fitting coming out the bottom, goes to a filter, shut-off valve, and right into the carburetor. Of course, it's gravity feed, and this is high enough to feed the carb. Now, of course, in the airplane, the tank will be up even higher, so the gravity feed will work better. But this will work for now for testing. Next up, I picked up some inexpensive gauges. It's an oil pressure and the oil temperature gauge to go on there. So now I need to figure out how to mount those on the test rig. I think I'll bend this tab out a little bit and just mount them on the test rig at an angle like that so I can see them while I'm standing there running it. All right, the gauges are mounted up. 4 holes, 4 rivets, no problem. Oil temperatures run down to the fitting I put in the bottom of the back plate. The oil pressure hook's in there. I'm going to pull the spark plugs once I get it full of oil and crank it over by hand, see if I can't get some oil coming out that before I actually fire it up. So I won't hook up the pressure gauge quite yet. Next, probably need to work on a throttle. I was going to build a throttle assembly back here to open and close the throttle, but then I got to looking at it. I'm going to be standing right here. This lever here is what came with the carburetor. This part here is threaded onto that shaft, and then I'll bolt, a pinch bolt, locks it in place, so that holds really well. It just flopped around without any other kind of linkage, so I ran a zip tie around that just to give it a little bit of friction. So now I can stand here and run the throttle and it'll stay wherever I put it. So that eliminated the need to have any kind of throttle back here. Choke is down here. I can reach down and move it when I need to. But there's another shot of that linkage. That'll work. Right now I'm going to build a little aluminum bracket to go from here to here just to keep that from flopping. When it's in the airplane, there'll be a bracket, rubber mount to go from here to the firewall to hold it steady. It's steady the other direction, just flops a little that way. So aluminum bracket there to there, just temporary for the test stand. Just got to build that little support. A little piece of aluminum here, but I wanted to show you a handy little tool I picked up from Harbor Freight for making holes in this thin aluminum. It has this plate here, and then different rods in different sizes that fit accurately in the hole. And you can slide your metal or whatever, put that in there and put that in the arbor press and press that down, and it will make a nice hole as opposed to trying to drill it. Now we've got little arbors from 3/4 all the way down to an 1/8. So works pretty slick, and it was cheap. It's set, and that leaves you a nice punched hole in the metal instead of trying to drill it. Hey, that little support's in there. Plenty to keep everything from flopping around during the test runs. Right, I wanted a tachometer on this. Got a little inductive tack there that I think should read right. I've done the little bit of wiring we need to put in the kill switch. Just a simple toggle switch there. You got one wire grounding to the magneto, the other one going into the points. So when the switch here is in the off position, that's an open circuit, you should have fire. Okay, I flip it like that to the on position, that will ground out the points to the connection here, and your spark plug should no longer fire. I dug through my parts pile, found a dipstick, so we're good to start filling it up with oil. I'm not exactly sure how much it's supposed to take, so we'll start out with a quart. I'm using an old Castrol bottle here, but this is actually 1540 Rotella. And hopefully this stuff doesn't just start pouring out the bottom of the motor. I did remember to put the drain plug in. Okay, 1 quart brought it up to the low lines. All right, about 1.5 quarts brought it right up to the full line. Sure, we'll have to add a little more once we get it pumped all the way through. And while I was waiting for that oil to drain down, I went ahead and run my crankcase vent line. Just run it down the side there. That way if it starts puking hot oil, it'll go right on my legs, so I'll know what's going on. Before I try to start it, I'm going to pull both spark plugs and wires and crank it over by hand. Hopefully we can get it pumped up to where I've got a little oil coming out the pressure fitting over here. And I can also check for spark, make sure I've got the kill switch wired up like it needs to be. Okay, we are definitely getting spark. And we'll shut it off. Nope, not seeing any spark. And we got oil. Another good sign. Okay, the oil pressure gauge is hooked up. Like I said, I really won't use this style on the final product. Spark plugs are back in. I added a little more oil. Got about a 1/2 tank of gas. And I can't think of anything else. Oh, I did. There was some worry about the paint inside the valve cover, so I popped those off, wiped the paint out since we're going to have everything nice and oiled now. So that's not a concern. I think I'll move this to a grassy area and we'll see if it'll fire up. Okay, we're ready to put some fuel to it. It's flowing right in there. And I did check the, I air pressure checked the float on the new carb. It was holding, so it shouldn't overflow or have any issues like that. I can't think of anything else, so I'm going to pull it through a few times with the choke on and the ignition off, and then we'll give it a, see if it'll fire. Ignition is off. Choke is on. And we do have a bit of a fuel drip out of the bottom of the carburetor, so I'll end up having to reset the float. That's no big deal for now. Alright, ignition's on. Well, to end this video, I'll save you a little time watching me flip the prop a bunch and not actually get it running. It did not start. I was a little disappointed, so I went for a motorcycle ride. That cheered me up, so we will get back to work on it tomorrow. But I don't think it was getting fuel. I checked the spark, it was getting spark, I primed it a little bit, and it would kind of pop and fart around like it was trying to run. But I don't think it was ever getting anything pulled up from the carburetor. The plugs were always super dry and it just didn't act like it was getting any fuel. Now the carburetor, while it was brand new, it was new old stock, so it's been sitting on the shelf for who knows how long, and it could have some corrosion inside. Part of the packing could have come loose, fell down in it while it was sitting there. Who knows, but I'm going to take it apart tomorrow, find out what's going on with it. It was puking a little fuel out of vent on the bottom side of it that I'm not sure how it's routed to the fuel bowl, since that's a Zenith and I'm more used to the Marvels like it's on my 8N. Probably should have took the carb off the 8N and stuck on there. I'd probably had it running today. Either way, we'll take the carb apart tomorrow, see what's going on with that. If that doesn't work, then we'll look more into timing. And then if that doesn't work, I'm not sure what I'll do. But I'll figure out something. All right, till next video, thank you for watching.